Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Craig Peters here from Soundiron, and in today's Soundiron session, we're going to be looking at a track in the style of Stranger Things. So before we get started, I definitely want to encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the notification bell to stay up to date every time we post a new video. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up this year, so you definitely don't want to miss out. So the score for Stranger Things was composed by Kyle Dixon and Michael Stein of the electronic band Survive, and definitely pays homage to a lot of the old classic 80s synthwave sound. And the thing I always liked about the Stranger Things score was it has that 80s sound to it, but there's always a little bit of hint of that darkness to it, that dark undertone, which is what I always liked. Especially because I grew up, watching a lot of 80s movies, so I really like that kind of sound, and it's a lot of fun to play around with and write. So today we're going to be breaking down a demo that I wrote for Oddball, which was our newest release, and with the library we sampled a few 80s and 90s Casio keyboards and put our own spin on it. And this library definitely inspired this track as it really harnesses that 80s and 90s sort of synth vibe. So let's go ahead and check out the track, and then we'll start breaking it down. Alright, so that's the track, and pretty much as far as the layout goes for the song, how you see the tracks top to bottom is pretty much how I wrote it. I usually like to go through the effects presets, see what kind of inspires me, and then just kind of go from there and just working on it like building blocks. And one of the things I always like to start off with, if I can, is cool arpeggiated presets, whether it's melodic or percussive, just because I feel like the arpeggiator kind of does the work for you, and it allows your brain to kind of sit back and just listen and interpret. So, especially when I think of Stranger Things, I always think of those kind of, just like the intro to the show. It has this very do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, very kind of just like repeated arpeggiated phrase. So that's kind of where I was going with this. So this is the very first how the track starts off. And you could do any sort of just kind of holding some chords, some minor chords with the second thrown in, just sort of adds that that little bit of darkness and tension to it, especially when you have like the first, the second, the flat 3, and the 6. You could even throw the 5 in there. That kind of thing. So that was pretty much how I started it off, and then I was just playing around with some chords. So just going back and forth between a couple chords. And then the next thing was like, okay, I need to start adding some more sounds. So now I incorporated this bass sound. just to add another synth element. And this is one of the effects presets that come with the library. All of these are, for the most part, effects presets. Because when you're writing tracks, you want it to sort of evolve over time and incorporate new elements within, every few bars or so. It's usually what I like to do for these kind of tracks. So you hear there's, a couple bars of just this arpeggiated thing. Which is another arpeggiated sound. Just doing a kind of... I really like the sound because you can hear that little bit of vibraphone in there and that synth at the same time. And this also uses the mod wheel too. So you can hear that synth that creeps in. And that's what I did too when you look at the MIDI data. You can see that there's some mod wheel going on. And this is just to sort of swell in that synth, killing two birds with one stone sort of thing. Not that we condone killing birds or anything, but you know what I mean. So after that, you have this glass bowing sound. And I wanted to use this to kind of accentuate the chord changes. So if you play these two together. Adding a little bit more melodicness to it and outlining the chords. Then we have this vibraphone, and this is just a little melody that I wrote, sort of outlining the chords as well, but playing off of them a little bit. So you got that. I really like the sound. It has that very much Casio sound, but it sounds kind of cool. I think it definitely adds that little bit of I don't know, a little bit of that magic sound to it. And then we got this other sound, which is this sub sound. It sounds really cool. It definitely adds that kind of like those like low boom sort of sounds to it. But it's got this kind of dirty wobble, which I thought was really cool. And it layers really nice in the track. You can't really hear it as much with everything together, but it's very subtle, but it's more you feel it. And then there's this reverse swell at the bottom. And that has a really nice sound to it. It's just very... And that's just a nice way to kind of crescendo into some of the next parts. I think I used this twice, actually. Yeah, so towards the end, and it pretty much does that for a while, and then the only other sound that I use that's not from Oddball is this Groove Agent 80s kit that I used. I just wanted a drum set that sounded very 80s, very that kind of like Linn drum sort of thing. And then I just slammed a bunch of reverb on it. All right, so going into the next part, what I did was I pretty much took the whole composition, pasted it over, and then transposed it up, I think maybe a minor third or so. Just because that's like an easy composition trick if you're like, okay, I'm not really sure where to go, or you want to change the vibe or just kind of like lift it a little bit. Just transposing is definitely a good way to do that. And then we got this synth lead. This is where the track kind of started going into like Karate Kid land. I don't know why. I named the track Enter the Dragon, even though it does have that kind of Stranger Things vibe. This was my other way of sort of like incorporating that that other sound of the 80s that you hear in Stranger Things that's very sort of has that dated 80s kind of sound. And I wanted to incorporate a melody, and using this feature lead just definitely had that kind of sound. And then just put some black hole on it. I think I just used maybe the stock settings. So this is how it sounds without it. And then with the black hole. You know, black hole, Valhalla Shimmer, plugins you'll see a lot on here. It just adds a lot of space to it. And when I think Stranger Things, I think very spacey, very huge reverb sounds and that kind of thing. So that's where, you know, with the adding of transposing the sections and then adding in this future lead kind of gives it that sort of 80s synthwave kind of thing. And then right here, it starts to harmonize. It's just the melody again, but has a little bit of a harmonized melodic sound to it. And then starting to harmonize it just in octaves, just so it has a little bit more of a bigger, brighter sound. So yeah, another thing I want to mention was before it goes into that section where all the music is transposed up, I wanted to sort of swell into it, and I use this reverse swell sound again because it has this big shimmering sort of like, it just sounds like you're entering this, I don't know, crazy space land or something. And let's see, we also got some other sounds. This is Whispers. And this one's cool. It's just got this very like, very soft, which is nice. Let's see, let me just play this section by itself. Same thing, just kind of keeping around with the chord progressions, but adding another layer to it. So you have this. And then you have this glass blowing sound. So one's a little bit more brighter, a little bit more chimey, and then the Whispers one's very airy. And then you got the vibraphone sound. And then add in that high arpeggiated chord progression. That's pretty much it. I really didn't use a lot. And like I said, for the most part, all of this is just using Oddball. That library is just, it definitely inspired this sound. I wasn't sure what kind of track I was going to write when I was writing a demo for it. And pretty much as I just started loading up the effects presets, it was just like, all right. And then just kind of turned into this. So it's a lot of fun. You never know where a track's going to go when you're composing. And you know, this definitely sort of came out in that Stranger Things inspired vibe kind of thing. For any of you who are interested in what I did for the overall mastering, I just did a little bit of filtering and then a little bit of a dip around the mid area and then a little bit of a bump up top. I'm using the SSL G comp, which is a really nice bus compressor. I usually like to use this on my mix bus in the very end. It just kind of, as people say, kind of glues the track together, kind of, you know, gives a little bit more of that cohesive push. And these are the settings for that. I usually generally go for about like a 30 attack. I usually leave the release on auto. Sometimes the ratio, I'll put it anywhere between 2 and 4, and then I'll just increase the threshold, you know, to where it's kind of sitting in between 0 and 4 dB. That usually tends to be sort of like a best easy go-to setting. So, but you definitely have to play around with it depending on your track and also the way you go about your gain staging. And then I'm also using the Waves Ultra Maximizer, and it's really cool. I just pretty much put the ceiling to, you know, minus 0.3, and then just adjusted the threshold down to where I got the volume that I wanted. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. All right, so that about wraps it up for this episode of Soundiron Sessions. If you like this video, definitely give it a like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you haven't already. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and if there's any other future things you'd like to see on Soundiron Sessions, or any sort of in the style of, or things you'd like to see more of, definitely leave them in the comments, because we always read them and we want to know what you guys want to see. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.